Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the Cinema Wave Podcast here at the Culture Wave Media Network, and we are here to discuss the penultimate episode of Season 2 of Apple TV Plus's Severance. It's the most popular show currently on the airwaves, on your television screens. I am one of your hosts. My name is Darian Michael. I am joined this time by Mikey Peniston.
Hello, everybody. Hello.
Lots to talk about.
Yes.
We got a lot to discuss with this episode. Everybody gets their spotlight in this episode, which is what I think they needed, especially coming off. We have those two bottle episodes, the one with Cobel and the one with Gemma. Mm-hmm. But everybody else is in this episode with the exception of Gemma. Like literally everyone. Huang gets a moment. Milchick gets moments. Milchick has a very interesting conversation with Drummond. Yes. Those are just the supporting characters. Then we have the return of Cobel. Again, from last week. Mark has some moments. Helly has moments. Dylan has moments. Burt and Irv have moments. So it's a big culmination of kind of all the buildup. So I wanted to kind of know your broad thoughts first on... There's been discussion online about the structuring of this season, which I think is interesting. Mm-hmm. And we discussed that last week with Liz about like how I think I was the one who brought it up. I was like, I kind of wish that they put the Cobel episode somewhere else in the season. Yeah. But then knowing the conclusion of what was happening at the end of the episode, it's like it's kind of hard to pinpoint where else you'd put it because she has that conversation with Devin. So kind of retreading a little bit from last week, but how did you feel based on the execution on this episode, bringing everything together in this big thing? And we know the finale next week is going to be 76 minutes. Yes. So it's a big episode. It's over an hour long. So a lot to get through by the time we get to the finale.
I'm expecting very big things for this finale, hopefully. But as far as this episode, I enjoyed it. I felt like where it came in fit exactly where it needed to be. I respect going back to our previous conversation where the whole Miss Cobel episode came into play. We needed a bit of a slow moment, I think, to really learn her character, especially now knowing like the states that her character, brings to Lumen, as far as creating this whole design, and the actual procedure. And so I think that structurally it's working really well. I know that this episode got a little bit of backlash from the fans as far as it not being, I don't know, too well or not a good
They wanted
setup.
More answers?
Yeah, something like that. I didn't feel that way, to be honest. I feel like we kind of spoke about how this episode needed to kind of cover everyone to a certain degree just because it was so heavily focused on Miss Cobel in the last episode. And so I think that they perfectly set us up for what could be big not conclusions, but, season conclusions for a lot of these characters. I like the amount of time that each character got. I feel like there was without like spoiling anything, there was like an overall sort of theme of love in this, and you got to see how love is at play with each of these characters.
100%.
And it was nice to kind of be vulnerable with these characters and see different sides of characters in this episode that will set up major things for next episode. So I was a fan.
Yeah, I think it was really well balanced. I think the edit was really tight. I think that the direction was really good. I thought Ben Stiller was also doing this episode, but he wasn't. Yeah. It was Uda something. I don't remember the last name. I don't know that. But they had directed other episodes of the series this season, I believe, as well. And like I said, there's a lot to cover. You said no spoilers, but I guess I'll warn everybody. We discuss a lot of spoilers on these pods. So if you guys aren't watching Severance and you're watching this episode, you just stumbled upon it, pause this, go watch season 2, and then return, because I feel like there's a lot that we could dive right into with every single character. So let's start with characters we haven't seen in a bit. Let's start with Irv and Burt. Okay. Because I think it's episode 6, might be episode 5, but episode 6 I think is the one where they had the dinner with Fields.
Yes.
And at that point we also weren't getting a lot of Irv in between, and I think it was the premiere episode that we covered this show for this season. You were like, this has got to be the season for my man Irv. Like, this has got to be it. And we're getting still elements of it. Yeah. But and we're uncovering certain things about him and how he's been looking into Lumen for so many years. And this episode, we kind of get a little bit more background on Burt, but we also get the first indication of Christopher Walken's character being a lot more menacing than he's been in any other episode. Like, he comes off in a different way. He's there's like a analogy for it, but it's like he's the guy in the chair. Like he's the villain in the chair. And you kind of have a 180 at the end of the episode when he's having this conversation, this intimate conversation with Irv, and Irv is really trying to kind of have this romantic entanglement with him, and he's like, I can't. Like we're not doing this.
Yeah.
So I'm curious how you felt about the whole way that played out with them and the initial conversation in comparison to the last conversation they had before Irv gets on the train.
I was very 50-50 with the Burt Irv storyline here. I always appreciate seeing anything with the storyline because, like you said, I'm a major Irv fan. Since he tried to drown Helly in the beginning, and so I like to see what's still being revealed, even though it's still not too much. But I will say that I felt like with their storyline here was a bit rushed. Maybe that's because, like you said, like we haven't seen
the breakups.
Yeah. And so it just felt a little distant. Like when you first came in and saw Burt in the room, it was very like menacing. Like this was not the Burt that we've seen. But now that I remember episode 6 when they had that dinner scene, there were a few moments where Burt came across as a bit menacing.
There's like a darker edge to him with his outie in comparison to his innie.
Yes, very much so. And so immediately I was kind of thrown off with the vibe that was being put out there with his character. I liked the reveal that we got with his character as far as more of his background as being a driver with Lumen, and you know his job as far as taking certain people involved in Lumen to a certain place and him not knowing anything that has to do with that. There's something really cool. I think that it was kind of indicated, or there's at least theories that, you know, his severed self was executing people at the end of these drives. And so it was nice to have a redemption sort of arc for him, I guess you could say. It was also weird, though, I will say, that in episode 6, it ended with Burt like making like hard moves on Irv, and Irv kind of being like, I don't think, you know, this is smart. And then it took like Burt,
it flips completely.
Yeah, out of nowhere, it just took him giving like a plane, like a train ticket for Irv to be like, you know what, let's do this. Like, what's wrong? Like kind of being there, almost, I don't want to say aggressive, but not really trying to forcefully make this happen, I'd say. And so I don't know. I don't think it's the end. I know we saw Irv leave on a train. I don't think that's the end of his character. There's still so much with his character. I'm curious if this whole menacing side of Burt is still going to continue to be at play, and if what he's really doing is actually harmful to the character. And so I don't know. We'll see. I'm
curious to see if we ever find out, because the last time we see Burt working for Lumen, he's obviously not a hitman. You know what I mean? Like, we're not seeing his severed self be someone that was in that same department, I guess you could say, unless that's just a cover.
Yeah.
So I would like to learn more about that too, and instead of being in the dark about what he did other than just being a driver, that would probably require more flashback. Yeah. I don't know how much of that we're gonna get. I'm actually surprised. I think Liz also said this, like, I'm surprised how much Walken we've gotten this season. Like, I really didn't think we were going to get as much of Burt in this season. Irv, there's still, like you said, the jury's still out. There's a lot that we still need to kind of go down with his path and understand, because he's been someone that's been looking into Lumen now for so long that he has to have more information. Like, obviously, he's still in the dark with things. That's why he's drawing these hallways. But there has to be more there. And I would agree with you. I think the structure of this season is my biggest gripe with this season. I still think the show is really good. And I like bottle episodes. I think everybody does. Putting 2 back to back is a very interesting strategy to me when you're in the midst of like this crazy story. And Ortbo, like, I think was the mid-season finale, or that might have been episode 4, but that episode was such a peak that it's like now we've kind of lulled ourselves to like the backstory kind of stuff, and that's fine. Like, it's better to have a structural difference where you're not doing the origin in season 1. But I do think that now, maybe you were talking to me before we started rolling, you're like, I haven't looked online about like the commentary, what people are saying, but you're like, some people aren't as much of a fan of this episode because they thought that they weren't getting the answers that they wanted. And it's like, well, we do have a finale to come that's 76 minutes, so I'm not gonna shit on anything. But at the same time, the way that it's been happening in succession, I'm like, all right, we started like 100 miles an hour with this season, and now we're kind of like, all right, we're slowing down to like an interesting pace. And even the characters, like, they're uncovering things that we've been speculating on for weeks, so it's an interesting kind of approach that they're taking. I feel
it is, and specifically to the Burt and Irv storyline, just to kind of like throw the theory that I threw out last week as far as there being more of a history between these characters. I still am running on that theory, just because I feel like we're witnessing things with Burt that could be full-blown lies and just not the truth, especially with this menacing side. Structurally, you're right. Like, it's like all over the place to be able to put these things together and even get this theory. But like, I do think that there is a chance that Burt was not being literal as far as just driving people places and maybe driving people crazy. And that was his job at one point. And so maybe he was still in some way a doctor, or in some way involved with Irv in the past. And this is like him setting him free
of their past together.
Is something bigger than we realized that we will uncover. So, I mean, structurally, yes, it's all over the place. I don't know if we'll get that until maybe the end of season 3. I remember that reveal, to be honest.
Yeah.
But which sucks. And I agree with you. The structure of it is just, it is annoying. It is frustrating.
Yeah. It's interesting. It's just an interesting formatting, the way that they're doing the episodes this season.
Yeah.
Let's jump to Dylan. Dylan had a great audible scream in this episode. When he yelled, I literally laughed out loud, and it was supposed to be a really emotional moment. He's like, no! I just think Zach is so funny. Zach Cherry is a treasure.
He is
and he should get a lot more roles on Severance. I feel like he's been in other things. But after season 1, it's like he could actually show like a little bit of a dramatic side, which I think he should get more opportunities. But the big thing with this, which we've been speculating for weeks, is that we finally get the interaction between Gretchen and his outie saying, I kissed your innie. And he's like, I'm going to go into work and I'm going to go fucking quit my job. I'm done with this shit. You're cheating on me with him. And it's the same person. Like, and it's that interesting dichotomy of what being severed actually means and the value of that according to who the character is, right? Because some characters view it in one way, some characters view it another way. We talked about it with Helly and Helena, like both their bodies being used for sex with Mark, and it's like, what does that mean?
Yeah.
And Dylan gets on his Dylan gets on his knee and proposes to Gretchen. He goes, I can give you the life that you want. And she's like, I can't do this. Starts crying, and that's when he screams. I feel like that's really that was the only thing that happened. Oh, and then he quits.
Yes.
He quits his job.
Yes.
Which is a big deal, because knowing outie Dylan is kind of just a low life that doesn't really have much to him. He just kind of comes home from work, sits on the couch, and he takes care of the kids, but like that's a loose term.
Yeah.
Like he kind of just overwatches them and he doesn't really play with them, or he doesn't like I remember in the one episode there's that small bit where he's like, come on, eat your broccoli, and he's like, no, and he's like, all right. It's like, you gotta feed your kid, bro, get the greens up. But I'm curious your thoughts on that whole sort of, we've been speculating on it, but getting that moment to play out in this and the repercussions of what it might mean, obviously, if now that he's quitting his job, like what is this going to mean for the turmoil in his family? Like we've seen him go down this path where he can't get jobs.
Yeah.
Like we've gotten, and I think those moments is what I really appreciate. Like the flashbacks in this season, I feel like have been great.
Yes.
Like that, the whole flashback. I thought the Gemma bottle episode was done a little bit better than the Cobel one. But just curious on your thoughts on the whole Dylan Gretchen storyline that we get this season, or this episode, I should say.
Yeah, no, I feel like it's always going to be a weird storyline. Dealing with this one, it was. I really enjoyed it just because I really enjoy Zach Cherry, and I like how he can go from comedic to dramatic really quick. As far as for the storyline, I'm a bit confused, I guess I should say, just because I remember at some point, I think it was season 1, they like made note that like the innies aren't allowed to like quit or something like that, or there was like some specific rule that was at play, and maybe that was just a specific thing with Helly because she was trying to escape multiple times in the beginning.
And now that we know she's an Egan,
yes.
it's like, why would,
like they could have set that, and maybe like this is something. I think that as far as the Gretchen love romance storyline, that I don't know how much further we could see that play out other than like one of the innie or outie like realizing that they need to change or do something. Innie, I don't think really can do that too much.
Yeah.
And so I think it will end up being like an ultimate decision on the outie, who I think we all realize, and he knows that he needs work and he needs the job and he needs this opportunity. But at the same time, I don't think they're just gonna let homie go, to be honest. I don't think they're gonna let him go that easy. I've been seeing a theory, and I didn't get to like rewatch it back, but I've been seeing a theory that as he gets in the elevator to leave, and before this happens, there was a really sweet moment with Miss Juan that I just want to shout out.
Oh yeah,
yeah. I just feel like they've always had like one of the, I remember in the beginning he like was like, why are you a kid or something like that, or said that to her or something. So their dynamic just as characters is, I like seeing them together. But there's a theory going around that when he got in the elevator, the arrow pointed down instead of up for them to like leave. And so people are speculating that he did naturally leave and they're sending him somewhere
I have to rewatch that because I don't remember that either.
I don't remember it either. But it just doesn't seem like Lumen to just let one of their people quit and go and that easy. It seemed very easy. And so I think there will be something at play with it. It was just way too of a quick circumstance for them to be like, oh, you want to quit? Okay, sign this paper.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I think that the only thing I can speculate on his outie, if they do allow him to leave, maybe that's another part of it too. If they don't let him leave, Gretchen's like, where the fuck is my husband? Like,
that's true.
That could be something where she gets looped in again. But if they do let him go, I think a big thing they're going to build on is Mark being the catalyst to sort of bring Dylan back in the fold on the outside, because he's the one that's like, I don't know what the fuck is going on the outside. Like, he's the most removed of the outies in comparison to what the innie's doing. He's like the only one between the four of them that like is fully severed at this point. It feels like still, you know what I mean? Like, obviously they're all severed, but Mark is reintegrated and Irving isn't even working there anymore. So now he's like, all right, I know enough that I can piece these things together. He's been doing it for years. Helena now has the internal struggle of her romantic life with Mark and what it means that they had sex, both versions of Helena, and what that means going forward. So there's not much, I agree with you, there's not much else they could do in terms of Dylan, but it's going to be based on one of those two things, right? Like, what's going to happen if they actually let him out, which we both think probably wouldn't happen. And if he's stuck there, maybe he goes down and he winds up seeing Gemma.
That's what I think.
That could, I could see that happening too. I don't know what that connection will be. It's like those interactions I feel like could be funny. It's like any Dylan with Gemma. It's like, what the hell does this actually mean? But there's really not much else I guess they can go with his character, really. They haven't focused a lot on, they focused on him obviously, but so much of his story is just based in his relationship with Gretchen. So unless or until there's something else that gets revealed, that's kind of all we can go on in terms of that. Helena and Helly, interesting episode for them, her, however you want to say it. And there's questionable cause at the end. It's like, okay, which version is this? Because she has the interaction with her father where he calls her Helly R, and she's like, don't you mean Helly E? And it's like, is Helly R acting? Has it been Helena the whole time? Was it Helena when she stormed the Milchick's office? So I'm curious on where you're lying with your theories, because I don't really know how I feel about it yet. We've been flip-flopped so much with her this season that it kind of becomes a little bit too heady at times. This episode was interesting to me because we open on her in the swimming pool, and then she's having breakfast with her father, and he makes one comment, but it's enough that maybe that was something where she's like, you know what, fuck this. Like, I'm going in the office as Helly E, and I'm going to do something that could mess up my family's legacy in Lumen. But I don't know. I don't know how I feel about that either. I think that maybe she's angry because Mark's not there, and she's worried about it. She talks to Milchick about that. He had a nosebleed yesterday. Like, there's a lot that goes into it, but I'm just curious on your thoughts and where you might be laying in terms of her whole kind of outline this episode.
Yeah, so Helly has been super confusing this whole season. We've seen so much of her, like you said, back and forth. The scene that really I feel like made it confusing was when we saw Helena meet up with Mark at like the diner, and I was like, oh, we're doing this now. Okay.
Yeah.
And so this episode was definitely confusing, I'd say. We spoke a little before, and I was theorizing that it was Helly. I think I had said it was Helly this whole time, and I think I said that she was. I forget exactly what theory I said. I now think
it's so hard to keep up, with them. It's so hard to keep up with them.
It's so hard. But what I now think is, I do think that that's Helliar. I do think that it's our normal Helly that's in there. I just see her being defiant, and like this being in character with her. I think like.
So you think she's acting at the end of the episode?
I do. I think she's acting. Just because the Helly that we saw in the beginning was clearly Helena. And I think that it was very important that they started with that scene. And I'm gonna start throwing some of my theories out there in the midst of it too. It starts off with the egg cutting, and I don't know if we spoke about it last episode just with the preview, but that's eggs very symbolic of fertility. And then we had like a whole kind of like interaction between her and James, and she only ate like she didn't eat the yolk. She
ate the white. Yeah.
And I think that all of this is hinting that she is pregnant.
Yeah, I've seen that speculation as well.
Yes, and so I think that Helena is well, obviously it's both of them, but
Helena
knows at least. And so I think that Helly is one not like acting, just because Irv, when he left the note, only Helly would really know that.
Yeah.
And she's like kind of continuing that this episode. That's one reason. She just seems really confused at the end when James.
She's like startled when he walks in.
She even like kind of mumbles like, "Who the hell are you?" sort of thing. And so I think that she definitely is like trying not to get caught in the situation. But I think that she is either gonna kill him. I think so. I think that she's either gonna attempt to like harm him, or something's gonna happen where she's gonna get brought to the testing floor. I think whether she hurts him or she's running away from him, I think that in the next episode, we're gonna see. I like the idea that you said Dylan ends up there. I like this idea that a few of these characters end up in the testing room in the finale, and a few of them meet Gemma. But I do think that Helly is acting in that moment. She is going to continue to act until she gets to the testing floor, and that's when Helena is going to come out, meet Gemma, and reveal to her that she's pregnant.
I think that's a great theory. I would love to see interaction between Gemma, Miss Casey, Helena, Helly. I think that there's a lot that you can play with there in terms of, I mean, they're Mark's love interests, man. Like, this is building the love triangle. We talked about it even with the opening credit sequence, how they've been hinting. Severance does that. They hint at a lot of things, and they're like, "Oh, it all means this," and it's the big reveal.
Yeah.
And the season 1 finale was so good that you would hope that they can amp it up for season 2. I actually think that's a really good theory. In terms of the pregnancy thing, this is the interesting thing to me, that makes Severance really great, but also it's like such a mind fuck for casuals. It's like you have no sense of time. Literally zero sense of time when it comes to the show. Like, you don't know, because it's science fiction, because now this season especially, like, I think season 1 you're only really in a few locations. Like, this season they amp it up times 10. Like, you're all over the map. You're getting bottle episodes with certain characters, you're getting flashbacks, and I think that's purposeful. I think they're doing it as the creators of the show to be like, your mind is always going, so you can't figure us out. You can't figure out what we're gonna do next. So in terms of the pregnancy thing, like, I'm not denying it. It's also just like, how long ago did Helen and Mark have sex?
It's so true.
Because it feels like, I mean, again, for us as viewers, it's like, this was like fucking 3 weeks ago. This is 3 weeks ago, bro. So I don't know. I do you know how long does it take for you to know that you're pregnant? Do you know this? This is what we need, Liz.
Yeah, right.
I don't know. I don't know off the top of my head.
The
male perspective cannot give you that answer off the top of their head.
I think it's no, it's 3 months for the embryo to develop. So I feel like it's probably a month.
Okay. So that could be, I guess in terms of timing, that would maybe make sense.
Yeah.
If we find that out by the finale. But that would be if every single episode we see is a week instead of a day. But anyway, neither here nor there. There's a lot to deal with Helena and Helly and see what happens there. But this episode we also get Mark reuniting with Cobel.
Yes.
Which is big.
It's huge.
It's big. He has a freak out. It leads to a really, I loved the conversation with him and Milchick.
Oh, me too.
And the way that whole scene played out in terms of the editing, in terms of the space, in terms of the writing, the acting, all of it, between Adam Scott and Tramell Tillman. And then we get the ending scene, I guess, where they're in this cabin, I think, right? Or they're in a house. They're somewhere.
Yeah.
And he gets integrated into his innie again. And he's so nervous. And he meets he sees Devin again. He met Devin, obviously, in the finale of season 1. Mark's innie, I should say. But he wants to jet out and be like, I'm not doing this. Whatever this is, I got to get the fuck out and get back to work. And Devin's like, if you walk out the door, you're just going to come right back in again. And so it's like, what could that mean? And then she is the one that walks him to have an interaction with Cobel, who's waiting to have a conversation with him, which is going to be huge. I mean, we're going to get another, like, the finale is going to be a lot of jumping between characters again. Like, I don't think we're going to see our characters reunite at the end of this season. It's going to be similar to what happens kind of in the premiere of, I think, speculating for season 3. Like, it's going to be similar to how in this season, like, they all finally come together and like, what did you experience? What did you experience? But it's going to be a moment of hopefully happiness, but we all were like, it's not going to end happy ever. But the Mark and Cobel stuff and Devin and Milchick, a lot there. What do you want to tug on first?
Let's tug on Milchick. Just because I feel
his conversation with Mark.
Yeah, and a little bit of the standoff that he had, just because I feel like the two.
With him or with Drummond?
But I'm saying the phone call with Mark and the standoff with Drummond, just because I feel like both could
acquiesce in a way. Yes,
100%. And so, I could kind of just say Milchick, I think, we were watching a crazy arc happen with
our
this
boy
character.
Is fucked.
He is.
Our boy is so cooked, dude.
Right? Oh my gosh. But I think he's also raged. I think he's like, we're finally starting to witness. What I mean, we watched it happen. Like,
we've been seeing it unfold. Yeah.
So starting with, I'm going to start with the moment with Drummond first, just because that played
chronological.
Yes, exactly. And so there was like a whole moment where Drummond is talking to Milchick, and Milchick is just kind of like updating him on things, and Drummond is very upset because they're wondering why Cold Harbor hasn't finished at this point. Like, it should have happened at this point. Like, the day was supposed
Mark
to be
did not report to work.
Yes. And so Milchick was trying to cover it up and all this stuff, but he was using very proper grammar, and Drummond wanted an apology from him, but the most dullest, I guess you could say, I don't even know, like the most
basic.
Stupid, basic, I guess, apology you could give. And he made him repeat it numerous times to the point of Milchick finally standing up to him, and I forget the exact word that he used. It was something
he said something in his Milchick way.
Yes, his grammar is just immaculate. But what's it called? It was very much a moment of, we're watching this character like turn the page as far as this company, and it's been a build up, like you said. But to see him kind of verbally go off on one of the higher ups was very refreshing.
Yeah.
And I think it very much played into the phone call that we had with Mark. It kind of came a couple scenes after, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
Where he reached out to Mark just to like see if he could come in, and Mark hit him with the
Well, Mark called him.
You're right, yeah, because Cobel was telling.
Yeah, so it's a great sequence of scenes.
Yes,
you have Milchick being completely defiant towards Drummond for the first time, and defiant in anything really since working at Lumen. And then you have the moment where Cobel is like, part of that is Cobel really understanding who Milchick is and the connection there between those two characters, being like, call Milchick and tell him you're not coming in. And there's like that weird mutual, part of it is mutual respect, but part of it is also fear. You know what I mean? Like, Milchick's always been the one to kind of go above and beyond and check in and be very real and be like, I'm Mr. Milchick. I work down the street at Lumen. You don't know me, but this is what it is. And now Mark's obviously dealing with being reintegrated. So there's parts of him, like at that time, he knows everything about his innie and his outie.
Yeah.
And you get those moments in the silence with Milchick where he's like, I'm not going to press on this. Like, Milchick has constantly been a rule follower. You need to do this. But he says, I appreciate you calling me. And he goes, just assure me you'll be in tomorrow. And he's like, I promise you I will be. Which is like, oh my God. Like, what does that mean? Like, where are we going to go? He's not even close to the office. Like, what the hell's going to happen with that? So that the mixture of those two scenes kind of building off of one another, I think is just like, I don't know, man. It's just well done, man. Like, it's so well done where like you can kind of peel back the layers of what that means for the character development, which I really appreciate. Was there something you noticed in particular with the phone call or that you wanted to add on? Because that's something where I think that scene means a lot more than people realize. You know what I mean?
It does. I do think it means one of two things. I think that it is, like I said before, the start of a revolution inside of Milchick. I know we've kind of talked about like the idea of like them all teaming up and forming what could be like the Avengers.
The Lumen Avengers.
Exactly. And so I very much feel like he would be a part of that. And so this could be the beginning of that. But it also, I just appreciated the humanistic side that we got to see between the two of them. Like, Mark has hit like the work is just work sort of line. And
it's all about balance, right?
Yes.
That's what he says.
And I don't know, it was almost like you saw the light bulb go off, but at the same time, there was so much cliffhanger still, like you said, left there, that it's like, because clearly he won't be, and I don't know. I don't really know how to read that scene. So, but I definitely do think that it's interesting. And there was another piece to Milchick. I thought it was very interesting the way that they set him up and Cobel, just to bring Cobel back into it as well. You're kind of seeing a place where you could trust both of these characters. And like the idea that they could be crucial parts to the Lumen Avengers. But at the same time, those cliffhangers are thrown in there. And Cobel, to a degree, too. I don't know if you can trust her completely.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So it seems like...
She built the program.
Exactly.
I mean, she might want to redeem that.
Exactly. Same with Milchick, where like he didn't build it, but like... at this point, it's so engraved in his mind, what we've seen with the mirror scene and all this stuff, that he could still want his own sort of redemption with this company. And so it's like they're doing a really interesting job here with these characters of like setting like what power could really look like in the hands of these characters, but also this like two-faced sort of side of like, who can we truly trust here?
Yeah.
And yeah, I wanted to use that to kind of bring the Cobel.
100%. I think it's just such a good we've been building up to this last couple weeks, but it's such a good analogy for like work, like the work life.
Yeah.
And like everyone is a cog in the machine at the end of the day. It's like people talk about, they're like, oh, well, at the end of the day, and this, think about just our reality. Like, people get laid off left and right. People lose their jobs. Like, a big part of it is understanding, like, you are a part of the machine. And that's what I think. That's why I don't think Cobel is going to turn back. But I do think that maybe we do see an opportunity. It's like, I don't know, maybe if Cobel, because you can see within the show, the Egan's want to keep it in the family. Right? Like the goal, I think, of why they have Helly in there as an innie, as Helena, is to give her the exposure to what the program is so that she can understand, and then she could take over the company at some point.
Yeah.
But if there's an opportunity for Cobel to take over, that's where it's like, oh man, praising Kier, bro. Praise Cobel. What do you mean? Like, so that I can kind of see. And then the interesting thing with Milchick is that there's still a lot to go with him. I still feel like we've been speculating all season long, like the interactions with Natalie, now him going through this same experience that Cobel has gone through, where he's being blamed for everything left and right. He can't like that. He was happy to have the power in the beginning of the season and say, why is her name still on my screen? Now he's like, I you could just tell he's like, I don't want this job. I don't want to be here. Like, if I'm going to be disrespectful, like, there's such an internal struggle with him. And then it's cool that you have the other side of it with Miss Huang, who's like, the fellowship. And she's like, I just want to do everything that I can do to be a part of the machine as well. It's in my internship program. And she has to, the like part of her humanhood has to be crushed. Literally and figuratively when you see her get her Egan bust and just bash in her game, her little ring toss game that was like her fun at work. And then it was like, nope, every bit of you that has humanity and has like joy needs to be taken away. Which I think is interesting, because then you see like scenes from the first season where you see Milchick have a little bit more personality. Like, this is the darker edged Milchick we're getting this season too. Like, no Milchick dancing this season. Like, we're not getting any of that. So it's interesting for sure. I mean, there's just a lot to play with going into the finale. There's
a lot to play with for sure. Just kind of jumping back into Cobel as well, just because so much there. I feel like, again, her character is super two-faced. Like, I don't know if we can trust her. I mean, at this point, she's gotten us to a place where they could communicate to any Mark, which is already huge. And so I think that's big. But this episode, I feel like she did reveal a lot. Like, we got the reveal from her that Cold Harbor 100% would be Gemma dying. Like, she dropped that on them. Which is pretty huge, actually, just to kind of like drop like as like a little dialogue line in the midst of nothing. But we got that. I do think that as far as the build up to the ending of this episode, when we're in like that log cabin, a lot was at play, and a lot symbolically was at play. This episode was called The After Hours, which is it's an episode of The Twilight Zone. That episode specifically was about like a mannequin that came to life.
It's the same episode title?
Yeah.
Same episode title in Twilight Zone as this episode.
Is this episode?
Yes. Interesting.
Yes.
Okay.
And that episode is about a mannequin that comes to life and starts to live this sort of outside life, and is like living out, meeting people, doing all this stuff. And she happens at the very end of the episode to come back and to this place that she was a mannequin at, and she goes up an elevator and she becomes the mannequin again. And it's like she comes to her realization that,
oh shit, that Severance pulled their whole story from one episode of Twilight Zone.
They did. Major inspiration.
That's crazy.
Low key stealing, but at the same time,
inspiration.
Homage. Yes, 100%. And there were a few lines in the episode. I can't get them word for word. I definitely should have looked it up a little better beforehand. But there was a moment where Cobel is sneaking them into like this Egan campground that exists out of nowhere with guards. And the guard is questioning them as far as coming in. And she mentions that Devin, because Mark at this point is in the back.
Is hiding, yes.
Devin is one of James, meaning like one of, I guess, the kids. It could be related to the fellowship. It could be anything like that. And the girl... the guard mentioned something about an elevator or something. 7th floor. It's like a code word. 7th floor yada yada. I wish I could get it better. I'm sorry, guys. But whatever she says is a line that's straight from the Twilight Zone that the character says.
That same episode.
Yes, and so all code, but all. I remember Ben Stiller said that everything in the show is intentional, and so I feel like that already is saying a lot. We enter into the. Were you gonna say anything to that point?
Well, I was gonna say I saw some speculation that they were saying that one of the Egan's spirits could have been in that room that we see in the first season, where they're all kind of there as taxidermist versions of statues, or not at the museum Illumin edition, but like yeah, we can like I can see that now, knowing where the episode comes from, like, and the fact that this is a cult, bro. Like, I don't know. I mean, again, I'm fully in on that it's a cult. Like, again, we got the confirmation last week, but I mean, man, there's a lot there. I mean, I think it's cool because this is like the closest thing, in my opinion, to a modern day Twilight Zone in a sense.
Yeah,
it's not obviously anthology. It's not like a new story every time, but you're really playing with the heady themes based on the world around you and what it means, and that's why I like the analogy that it has with corporations and work and the machine. Like, it's a great commentary on all of that while still playing within its own wheelhouse and its own world. So I do like that. It's crazy though, man. I didn't even realize that.
Yeah, no, it is. There's definitely major connections to that. The whole living two separate lives mannequin thing. Whether you want to look at that as Gemma. Honestly, it could be any of these characters. It could even be Miss Cobel herself at this point, because it immediately cuts to her in that, like you said, fiery state. There's a quote that I've heard. It's like something about hell, but like woman cannot guard. Again, I wish I had all these quotes better. But people are saying that quote is symbolic of Cobel standing in front of that fire, and like how Illumin is compared to like hell. Like, this is like a woman, like kind of like coming to the throne and basically take over at this point. But I still don't know if I trust her. I also am going to drop this in there. I don't know if I trust Devin as well, to be honest. I think we have talked about that beforehand in one of our episodes. I do think that the moment that we have any Mark come to, and he's very confused. I think that he had at that point tried to escape a few times. So that's why, like, Devin knew. She
knew what was going to happen. It's happened multiple times before we get that.
Yeah. And so then she walks him up. So I think that explains that. But I'm still very suspicious with her character and Rickon. I still have this. I believe the theory that Rickon is an Egan, to be honest. And that's
not a bad theory.
And that I think he's a brother to Drummond. They could just look strangely alike.
That's funny.
Yeah,
that would be funny.
Yeah. But I think something is going on there with that. And I think Devin could be like kind of like
brainwashed into it.
Sort of like 1 foot in, 1 foot out sort of thing.
Gotcha.
And so I don't know. I don't know how I feel about that. But, you know, as far as this moment that we have Mark coming up to Cobel, my first initial thought was, before thinking that like, oh, she's coming to take things down, I thought that maybe there was in a severed version of one of the past Egans in Miss Cobel, and that we're about to have like a conversation. Like, at first I was like, because like this whole like fight against Cobel versus Kier's like ideas, what if they put Kier and Cobel? I think that's a drastic idea, and I'm 100% wrong. But that was my first initial thought. It was just very ominous, the feel that we got at the end of this episode.
Yeah, there's a lot. I mean, there's a lot to speculate on. There's a lot to kind of figure out. We're gonna have to wait and see what happens. 76 minutes we got next week for the finale, or this week technically, as of this recording.
Yes,
on Friday, I think, or Thursday. Does it come on Thursday nights?
2 a.m. Yes.
Yeah. Well, yeah. But so Friday essentially. But I'm excited, man. This was a great penultimate episode. It was great to see all the characters kind of come back. But excited to see what happens in the finale. Yeah. So you guys got to let us know in the comments, what are your thoughts on episode 9 of season 2 of Severance. Let us know your theories going into the finale. Let us know your thoughts on all the separate storylines we get with all the different characters we've discussed. We'd love to hear your thoughts. We know a ton of you guys are watching the show, so we'd love to continue the conversation with you guys and discuss it in the comments. You can comment on our stuff on social media. We'd appreciate it. Give this video a like if you guys can, and subscribe to us here at the Culture Wave Media Network. We're also covering tons of other stuff right now. We have The White Lotus we're covering. We're covering Daredevil Born Again. We have reviews up right now for Mickey 17. We have reviews upcoming for Black Bag, for Opus. Snow White's upcoming. There's the movies. The movies are starting to expand a little bit more as we get further along into the year. So be sure to check that stuff out. And if you guys want to find our social media stuff, all that is below me in the video. It's also in our YouTube description, so you guys can check out all of that there. And we'll see you next week for the finale. Just signing off. I'm Darian Scalamoni.
I'm Mikey Peniston.
And we'll see you guys next time.
This is The Culture.